Hello, I'm going to try to put chapters 3 and 4 in sheltered instruction into this one video. I want you to read those chapters, and I've already given you a lot of stuff, so I'm going to try to keep this fairly brief. Now, you already have a video about SIOP, sheltered instruction, and that's the commercial video. It's the very people that do this book. It's one of their other ones. This kind of book, Introduction to TESOL, and it's kind of a sheltered instruction being snuck in on you. But I think that's okay because several of you have expressed, and I want to say those discussions are outstanding. I've already replied to everybody. Got quite a bit of variety here. Got Erie, Pennsylvania. I think it's Erie. Or is it Michigan? I'm getting my state. I know it's Erie, and or New York, of course, New York, and Maine. And I want to welcome David and Erie, and gosh, you know, I'm under pressure. I sat here, the name slips past me, but I'll think of it before I'm done. But I want to welcome, it's really interesting to have this level of diversity in the class geographically. Want to welcome you to UNK, into this program. I'm going to do my darndest to try to get you everything I can get you. I want to remind everybody, if you have other questions, issues, you want to know more, it's not always part of the class, but I can get you all kinds of goodies. A lot of video stuff I can make available. You may see it later in class, so don't keep asking for new material because I'm the only thing that's new. And I'm not really that new, but by the way, I have my New York shirt on, so if anybody's excited about New York. I'm a big Yankee fan. Some of you know this. I know some of you are probably Boston fans up there in Maine, but forgive me, I'm actually watching the Yankee game on my computer as this goes on. They can start doing anything with Baltimore on this Tuesday night. Okay, enough wasting time. Sheltered instruction is a great approach. I shared several approaches with you on the videos, on those links, the natural approach, the communicative level. That means you're very careful about the material is right at about just above the level of where the student is, so they can stretch to learn more. That the material is not only academically a positive gain for them, but that it's taught in a way that's instructive and positive. Now, I like sheltered instruction very much. It's called SIOP. When you put it in, you get something about some kind of society of industrial psychology or something, if you look at it on Google, but that's not SIOP. This is you can actually get the material and the whole program. You can even have people do presentations to you. And so I kind of do that in 826, which is a methods class. But I don't want to just wed myself just to sheltered instruction, but sheltered instruction is valuable for this reason. ELLs cannot just be put into a class and be told, we're going to make sure you know enough English before you can go into regular classes. Well, that's going to take years. Kids could spend a long time ago, not that long ago, but 20 years ago, 30 years ago, people put them in ESL classes and they'd spend all of high school in ESL classes. They never earned any credits. And then they went to in modified versions, like in Lexington, where you could earn credits while you're in ESL. And that was so they could earn credits toward the high school graduation. But that was a stretch, and that was before sheltered instruction really was introduced. And so you had a lot of ESL teachers, and they were put in the situation of, now you're a science teacher, but you weren't trained to be a science teacher, but now you are because you're working with the English language learners. Well, sheltered instruction gives a very systematic approach. I like it because it spends a lot of time on what are your goals. Building background with your students is huge. If you don't know your students, you're not going to be able to teach them very well. The old attitude of the chemistry teacher saying, I teach chemistry, I don't care. You just send them to me, and if they can learn it, they'll learn it. If they don't, then they don't. But as a teacher, you can't go in second grade saying, if these kids don't learn to read, it's their fault. I presented it to them. I can present you with things too. I could just send you readings and not even talk to you. But I'm obligated to make the material understandable, comprehensible, that you can progress in it, you can think about it. And so that's what I'm trying to do here. Sheltered instruction, the commercial video goes through all the steps. And there's several steps. And I don't have them all memorized because I don't do that. But if you go on page 47 of your textbook, it actually has the sheet that is kind of like a checklist. And you can do this in different ways. They show examples. And you obviously start out with preparation. I like it because you include the students in the lesson plan. You have content objectives and you have language objectives. So this is ESL, but it's also a content class. Maybe history, maybe art. And you got to say, what is it I want them to understand about art? And what is it I want them to use language. Maybe it's going to be reading and writing, but maybe it's going to be more speaking and listening. Depends on the class. It's always a good thing to have listening, speaking, reading, and writing all combined in various proportions. Obviously in a speech class, you do a lot of speaking, but in a Algebra 2 class, you're going to do a lot of math, but you may talk through the problems in the different steps. I remember reading about somebody that mentioned, that they talk through. Oh, I know. Somebody sent me an email today next door, and it was our math teacher here, and it said it was about ESL and math, and it was about talking through the steps of the problems so that people not only have conversation, but they have academic discussion about the meaning of how do you do multiplication or how do you do various mathematical equations or story problems. So it has all these listed out. And I like this because there's a great emphasis on preparation, building background, and comprehensibility. And there's also about other things, the level of interaction strategies, practical application, what practices, you have them do something to show they've gained the skill. And then he talks about how you deliver the lesson, and then you kind of review and you kind of look back on it. So it's got these, and they actually started this out. The reason SIOP exists is they were scientifically, as much as it can be scientifically, they were studying how well people teach. And they came up with this checklist. Then after they went through the checklist, they realized, well, this could actually be the plan. The checklist can be turned around, and this isn't something you assess with, it's something you do right from the beginning. I always like to emphasize that. Assessment shouldn't be some peculiar, odd thing at the end, but it should be a natural part of the whole process. Assess as you go. If students are not able to understand the lesson and building background, so you keep changing them. Now, another thing I like about SIOP, and this is a big deal, is that you build quality lessons. And I think those of you taught a lot, these. Either they're in your head or you have the materials, but you build quality lessons. You may steal the ideas from other people, by the way. Stealing's perfectly fine as long as you're not making money off of it. But if you're teaching, I'm okay with it. But my argument here is that once you create these lessons, or if you get them from somebody else, you got a lesson you can use every year. You don't have, and I want to use something other than a cliche, you don't have to reinvent I don't want to say the wheel, but you know what I mean. You don't have to reinvent the computer. It's already in existence. You just go in there. So as you look at that tape, it gives examples of how people are teaching. You can actually observe a number of teaching strategies in the video. Okay. But they're not endless. It's not the only set. And in the text, you know, they have examples here in chapter, and you can look about how they do this. And they have an example here in science about the cycle, the water cycle. You know, you may have this on, you may draw it, my gosh, you know, you could draw it and put it on a PowerPoint. I'm not crazy about PowerPoints. I have a lot of them, but I'm trying not to use them anymore. I don't mind giving them people just to go through and look at, but I'm not going to sit here and appear in the corner of the PowerPoint. Lots of hands-on stuff. They talk here about as you prepare and do your exercise, you know, bulletin boards, a lot of things you already know, technology. We got students that are excellent in technology, and there's another one that their mind, I can't quite bring them to, oh, they're in the other class. I guess that's okay. But the idea is you read this, you can see that it provides excellent examples. So I do like this book for this particular class because several of you expressed, well, I want to know how to teach. Well, I actually have other classes for that, but I can't avoid mentioning some really good examples here. The SIOP is one of the major components of the teaching class, the 826, because I like SIOP and I'm really, now if you don't like it, that's fine, but you can use parts of it. When I always teach SIOP, I always go over the first 3 or 4 parts. It talks about things such as comprehensibility. How do you speak to the students? You don't speak slowly. It's not like you're in France and you think you speak better French if you say, a taxi, le taxi. You put an LE in front of everything. Maybe that works for you. But speaking slowly just makes you sound kind of artificial. Clearly and a little bit slowly is okay. Also, I want to thank someone. Someone mentioned a site, the news in Spanish slowly. And I didn't know about that site. And so if you're listening, you want to improve your Spanish, you can listen to the news, but then it kind of gives it back to you, I guess, so that you can comprehend. Because the frustrating part is it's not comprehensible, it goes by too fast. That's a good thing to remember as you teach. They talk here about different strategies. Those strategies you can get from all kinds of places, including all those documents I sent to you. By the way, I sent those to you via email so that you can download them and click on the links. They should work that way. One person said they weren't working, got who that was, but I remember answering and hopefully it works now. There's a little thing in Canvas where it has a quirk in there. It says you're not allowed permission or something. And that I have to relearn that because that doesn't happen too often, but it happens once in a while. And since I'm relatively new at Canvas, that's my excuse. Okay, so this text in chapter 3 is excellent. It gives you all kinds of examples. Of course, I commend that video to you. It really helps. Now, affective issues, that's the second chapter. And it gives some examples like it says, Mohammed, a Somali-born 4th grader, has behavior problems and learning problems in schools. Teachers wonder if the problems he is experiencing can be attributed to culture or language differences. And then another's a student has learned to speak English in 8th grade, Yadira, but she doesn't write very well. And why is she not writing well? Well, obviously some of this, I mentioned the Bics and the Calps. Just because you speak English doesn't have anything to do with your reading and writing. It's a separate set of skills because for tens of thousands of years, everybody spoke their first language. But until writing was invented, it was just a few people could write. And certainly very few people could read. It was a very exclusive club. We don't want that to become that way again, And then I'm going to keep mentioning this. Make reading fun. Make writing purposeful and fun. And when I say fun, I don't mean telling jokes. I mean, if it worked, I wouldn't care. the point is, it should be meaningful activity, and people can say, oh, once I finish this, like an application for a job or a letter to my grandmother that I write in, say, German, because I'm just taking German. I want to write to my relative in Germany. And then it's meaningful because you actually are communicating in their language. Hopefully your grandmother won't send it back with corrections and scold you. That would not be very purposeful or supportive. Actively involving learners, engagement. It talks here about grouping strategies, native language support. There's been some mention in the class about dual language. I'm a huge supporter of dual language, but you know why dual language is often not possible? First of all, you have to have the funding and you have to have the people available to hire that can teach in an elementary school, and can teach it and say, I know in Milwaukee, there's a big school that's German and English dual language. Lexington has a dual language elementary, Spanish and English, and it's so successful that people want to continue that as they go into middle school and high school. They're having some success. I don't know what the exact situation is, but once you've been taught Spanish from first grade, kindergarten, you don't go to high school Spanish class. You're way too good for that. You're way more advanced than just the typical Spanish teacher. You're more of a heritage speaker. You actually speak the language fairly fluently. In other words, you understand it very well. So that's why I love language and for kids. I think it's so natural to learn 2, 3 languages. A lot of the American public doesn't buy into that, but that's unfortunate. They talk in here about activities with the community, family literacy nights. Obviously, when I'm teaching my other class about advocacy, interaction with the family and promoting reading at the same time are huge combinations, very helpful. And then we move on. We got keeping expectations high. It's not a long chapter. And here's the issue, I think, and I tell this in my other class for advocacy, but you want students, you want to have high expectations for them, not unreasonable, but the key is that you cannot realize what people are capable of once you've unleashed their passion. Reading. I'm sure you have kids or your own kids, or you've seen people have made incredible achievements in this class. We have individuals that picked up English when they were teenagers. I've seen this many times in Lexington. Not all were very successful, but some with apparently at a terrible disadvantage became incredibly fluent. That is because they were motivated, they were passionate, they were dedicated, and learning becomes infectious or contagious. I guess that's the wrong term. Contagious is that when you have the joy, it's like being an artist and you make art. You want to make more art. When you enjoy reading, you want to read more. When you like music, you want to learn more about music. You want to sing more songs. That is what I worry about. This for anybody in any of my classes ever, is that when learning becomes a drudgery, it's really almost abusive. It's a perversion of learning. Teaching and learning should be like playing catch with your kid if you like baseball. It's a joy to do that. It's not a pain. Oh no, I don't want to play baseball. You know, I'm thinking of Field of Dreams. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but the guy finally realizes that his father wanted to play catch with him as a kid, and he didn't like his father, so he wouldn't play catch with him. And then many years passed, he gets a chance to see his father again as his father is a young man. It's kind of a dream, Field of Dreams. And he realizes that he had mistreated his father and he loved his father. And he realized he lost so much because he made fun of baseball. And he really wanted to play catch with his father. And so the movie's really about that. Very touching movie for me as a baseball fan. and there aren't any Yankees in it. They're all White Sox for the most part, or other teams. But so when you read these two chapters, the structure of the sheltered instruction workshop, and instruction, it's called protocol, and they have workshops teaching it. But the approach, this approach in classes gives you very clean, natural ways to arrange your lesson plan. You know, lesson plans, you go up, and I remember years ago, we'd always fight about the lesson plan, and it always seemed like such drudgery making a lesson plan. Now it's really fun making a lesson plan because you're doing things that are interesting and exciting. You're not just simply putting step 1, step 2, step 3, students will repeat, step 4, students will practice, step 5, students will perform. And I remember my student taught years ago, it was no fun at all. I would just grind these things out. And so I said, well, thank God that's done. And then I'll give it to whoever's in charge, and hopefully it's acceptable. And then I never saw the joy of teaching. I just saw it as student teaching. I didn't enjoy it at all. But it was in middle school, and I was teaching the same history class 6 hours straight, over and over and over, no variety. People say, well, you only have one lesson plan. But the problem was I kept getting confused to where I stopped in one class and where I began in the other, you know, and that's back in the 70s. And there were a lot of things like this would have been mind-boggling to even have something like this available to help organize one's attempt or one's mind while preparing lessons. Now, there's only one thing I don't like about the sheltered instruction tape that you're watching, and that is the one about getting students involved. And she uses the concept of dropping the atomic bomb on Japan and compares that to being a stool pigeon and telling on your friend who's going to go to a party and get in trouble or something. And the problem is that it's not it's not equal. It doesn't make any sense. And so I really have a problem with it, because it's like dropping an atomic bomb and killing 75,000 people. That's kind of like getting in trouble with your friends for telling on them. And that makes absolutely no sense. That's the silliest thing I've ever heard. Other than that, they're all very good. They have excellent scaffolding and different teaching strategies. So you can actually follow these and you'll see all kinds of examples. I've got other tapes from other classes, and I will share those. I just won't put them on for everybody. But if some of you say, look, I need to see as much as I can see, I love giving you material. I kind of like a library of videos. It took me many years to get all this stuff together, but I finally got it. And I may overdo it using some of the same material, but usually if it's good enough and you haven't seen it, it's relaxing. Okay, well, I think that covers it. Just remember the sheltered instruction, and also remember the affective, which I think when I mentioned about learning and language, that the emotional acceptance of the situation where you're learning makes learning so much better and it's so much less stressful. So I want to thank you, and this is a bit longer video than I planned, but I think it covers everything in these 2 chapters. I will put up your discussion tomorrow for $8.99. I don't think I put it up yet, but I'll look. But it's due on Sunday. I will put it up tomorrow. I might put up tonight, but I'll probably put up tomorrow. I get yelled at for being home late, but you know, you understand. Okay.